10. The Big 10. David 10-inch sideburns. Huge fan favourite, modern icon of the show, with good reason. In my opinion, the most consistent and best written Doctor ever put to screen. Never before had the show been a TV event blockbuster, with running, kissing, and the odd bit of crying. Turning the Doctor into a romantic foil these days doesn't appease everybody, especially when he's had grandkids and pin this guy. But it's all in service of Davis's endgame. And yeah, with this era, we truly do have a genius of franchise storytelling at the helm. That communal nostalgia is well earned. Adventures in time and space come across as fun sci-fi dates. It's new, but it's also a natural fit to the formula. I've loved this Doctor for 15 years at this point, and I'm still noticing little links. There's hints of his vanity in his opening moments. This Doctor's need for somebody to tie him down, to hold him back. His disdain for the curse of immortality, it all links back 2 or 3 seasons even. Damn, you could even make a video about that. But wait a minute, haven't we done all this before? Yeah, no, I released this video, I did this guy. The BBC have been milking it for money for years. Why bother paying the TV license? In truth, I'm really not happy with that video. As my second favourite Doctor ever, and by far the most impressionable, I think it's time we set the record straight and did 10 justice. And maybe this time make a good video, Sam? But to my credit, this is one of the harder lists to compile. There's so much good Tennant media out there. Novels, comics, audios, so high caliber. The sheer consistency of these stories is unparalleled, and I don't think we ever get it again in the new or old series. From big event television to the seemingly infinite array of novels I still read to this day. So this time, honourable mentions: Smith and Jones, The Sound of Drums, The Satan Pit, The Betrothal Sontar, Death to the Doctor, basically every Big Finish story, Blink, Midnight, The Woman Who Sold the World, and Fear Her. Just kidding, Fear Her remains terrible. Damn, the 1-2 punch of Love and Monsters and then this doesn't bear thinking about. But while Love and Monsters is at least a very cool Davis idea, executed in the most audacious, batshit way possible, Fear Her doesn't have that kind of ingenuity. I like the premise of a lost, lonely alien lashing out and making a friend. And the episode does correctly use that to portray an abused family. On the page, there's nothing wrong with this. On the screen, there's nothing wrong with this. It's a much better looking episode than I remember. But in the performances and the direction, everything is wrong with this. I think where this episode falls short is that the Chloe Webber role is so incredibly demanding. Not only are you playing the main antagonist, but you're also playing a girl who has to be likeable and vicious and also relatable, as well as possessed, whilst also playing a sympathetic alien and facing repressed traumas. That's a lot to pin on a small child actress, and she doesn't carry the episode. And since there's nothing else interesting enough on the street to focus 45 minutes on, we're with the Doctor and co. Just doing their thing in suburbia. But even they are a lot more twee and obnoxious than usual. This is my least favourite episode for 10. I cannot watch him in it. I skip it on the box set. I'm almost happy that the next 2 episodes smack that smile off his face. It's a lot better than people give it credit for, but even as a kid I knew deep down that this episode marked the point where Rose just had to go. Number 2. Last of the Time Lords takes a beating on this channel. When Davis doesn't deliver on a finale, he really drops the ball. Now, albeit this is rare, but the problem with constantly upping the stakes is that sometimes you can't beat yourself. This 3-parter set the stakes at Sir Derek Jacobi, the end of time, and the Master's return. And The Sound of Drums really keeps the pace going with a change in scenery. That is the Master's episode, but this is very much Martha's episode. I like Martha a lot, but fridging our main cast and cutting back to a villain who's getting less interesting and more obnoxious by the second, it does feel like the story has run out of steam. I love time skips, but a time skip has to mean something, and the final 10 minutes of this episode are basically unforgivable. From magic Super Saiyan hair, to the psychic link, to the Dobby house elf, to the big red button that just reverses time itself, undoing the story. Yeah, still mad. Still mad. On an emotional level, it still works. I take it over a convoluted Whittaker story any day. But like in a lot of his other stories, the actual heavy stakes is constantly undercut by weird extraneous details. Bonkers Davis ideas that do not belong here. This finale is just Davis completely unrestrained, adding bonkers plot point onto bonkers plot point. I watched this in 2013 in my media class. None of the episodes, none of the others, just this episode in isolation, and I felt so fucking embarrassed to be a Doctor Who fan. When I call Davis a genius, I mean like in long-term character development, not in short-term episode resolution. There are 4 episodes off the top of my head which literally get resolved with a big red button. I may never warm to this one. Number 3. The Lazarus Experiment. Previously, I had stories such as New Earth and Daleks in Manhattan occupying this spot, and somehow managed to push this story from my brain, which is exactly where I want to keep it. Hey, maybe for the bad list, Sam, you should put a bad episode. Well, here it is. Apart from this and the prior one, I think I'd convinced myself as a kid that Series 3 was practically perfect. Evolution of the Daleks and 42 are notably better than I remembered them, but it's certainly not a perfect season. Richard Lazarus feels like a performance first and a character second. Always managing to feel like interesting material for Mark Gatiss to play with, but not that interesting for the audience to actually watch. Also, not a great idea to hinge a whole plot on a CGI Scorpion King effect. Like the whole plot. Look past that and there's almost no story left. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is gonna sue! If you haven't watched this one back lately, you will be shocked by just how suddenly he turns into the giant Scorpion Man. It's played like a comedy beat. Either this episode got clipped down haphazardly, or maybe they just wanted a superficial CGI monster runaround like last year? Either way, I'm glad we abandoned this type of story. It's almost plotless. I will give it points for gorgeous cinematography. One of the best looking episodes of the decade, other than... There's a little bit of nice flowery dialogue about Ten's eventual arc with his experience of immortality, but that's just it. It's just flowery dialogue. It's nice that there's no alien intervention and that the explanation for the creature itself is actually quite cool. But other than fleeting moments of cool, this story just really has nothing going for it. Still pop it on every now and then though. You might be surprised. Planet of the Dead. Now I wrote my notes for this one very drunkenly, and I cannot read it, so I'm just gonna wing it. Planet of the Dead. Gareth Roberts, Rusty Davis, production issues. All the pieces are there, but with some superficial scripting and vague pacing, and it does that Chibnall thing of making you think you missed 10 minutes somewhere down the line. Owning this now, hilariously on Blu-ray, when it's right there on Netflix, was an odd purchase, sure, but I was hoping to basically unearth a Lost 10 story that just slipped through the cracks of my brain. And yeah, I did get something out of this purchase. Was it being able to see every follicle on Tennant's pretty HD face? No, I'm shocked that 10 scenes are so effective. The core premise of the bus going missing is strong and authentically played, but when we inevitably abandon them for a large part of the runtime, it's a damn shame. Tennant is so captivating and good in his speech about getting everybody home. That's the highlight of the episode for sure. Taking the absolute opposite approach that he did in Midnight. Then there's another moment where he learns the impeding threat is coming. Is that blank panic? Or is he problem solving? We don't know. I love Tennant in this story. As an actor, he's bringing his A-game from here all the way to the finale. The secondary cast are great, from the old lady on the bus who sends his doctor into a downward spiral. We've got Angela, who is just my mum transported into a Doctor Who episode, and Daniel Kaluuya as the most unfortunate underutilization of a future celebrity since Andrew Garfield for the year before. It looks pretty, and every cog appears to work, but this has the rhythm of a standard Whittaker story, and the only thing I can think of is the production issues. But also maybe it was Gareth Roberts, so let's just blame him. I can definitely tell which parts are Davis's and which parts are Roberts. Also, hell would have to freeze over before I listen to the Christina D'Souza Big Finish box set, bitch. I see the Slovene on the box set, you can't make me. And lastly, let's stop all the nasty shouting and talk about the real culprit here. Doctor Who Top Trumps the game. Martha, we have to defeat the Slitheen in a Top Trumps game. Yeah, Doctor Who merchandising went and got sentient, and it's just out of control. This is how the Doctor Who franchise was meant to be experienced. I think one day I should play this game. A let's play, if you will. I dare you to make this canon. And although Top Trumps might be a foundationally flawed, luck-based, pointless time killer, it's still a darn sight better than what Telltale did with the franchise. From the makers of The Walking Dead. Huh? Telltale never had the license? Well, what is this then? Yeah, it occurs to me that a lot of people may have not even heard of this one, and that I say, you're not missing much. Look, I'm an animation guy. I hate dunking on the few episodes of animated Who out there. I think it holds such promise for the program, and if I was calling the shots, I would make an animated Doctor Who show tomorrow. But if this red button bonus feature wants to go around pretending to be a 45-minute episode, then oops, it's gonna get treated like one. Much like the other animated 10 episode, this was originally a split-up miniseries, put together like a Frankenstein Megazord, but the pieces don't really seem to go together. As a result, the pacing is fucked. Forget about it. Cliffhangers every 5 minutes. You can completely see where one mini-episode ended and the next one begins. Yeah, Infinite Quest Infinity War maybe did have the same problem, but it also had Anthony Head as a great villain whose name I actually remember. It treated itself like a pure serial and embraced episodes like The Chase or Keys of Marinus in all of its glory. Dreamland is very much trying to be an episode of Doctor Who, and it just doesn't fit in. It feels like somebody's fanfic self-insert. And the animation, come on. Looking a bit stiff there, Tennant! I keep waiting for dialogue options or the screen to pop up and say, Balthazar will remember this, but it never comes. Ironically, you will not remember this. And now we're at the middle point where I just subtly remind you that End of Time Part 1 is one of the most humiliating pieces of TV I've ever seen that made me regret and feel embarrassed to be a Doctor Who fan. And then Part 2 kicked it up to be the most insane finale I've ever seen. Perfect send-off to the 10th Doctor. A gorgeous episode. This looks amazing on Blu-ray. A victory lap that is so well earned that you even forgive its self-congratulatory fan wank. Tennant, Dalton, Cribbins, Sim. That is the lineup of some of the best acting this show's ever seen. And I never see anybody respect that. When I was a kid, I had one episode downloaded on iTunes and I would carry around with me, and it was the End of Time Part 2. And that might mean nothing today, but that meant everything. In a worst case scenario, if I had to pick one episode to take with me, apparently, it's the End of Time Part 2. Interesting. And apparently controversial. I don't care. The best list! The best list! The Stolen Earth. Where was this episode on my best of list last time? That's a crime. The Stolen Earth is an epic TV blockbuster, and that doesn't happen and shouldn't be able to happen on a BBC budget. Watching it transports me instantly back to that 2008 hype mindset. Interest in this show has never been higher. Apart from the effortless crossovers from two great shows finally airing on BBC One, it's also basically a Dr. Light episode story, with the TARDIS team playing catch-up and even hiding from the impeding threats. And what are threats! The Daleks are at their all-time peak of stakes and capabilities here. Their true potential is in numbers on a conquest scale like we have never seen before. But the budget, never before allowed! Scary, brutal, unstoppable, and truly epic. Here are the Daleks on the scale always intended. Finally. As well as my two favourite Daleks in existence. I confess, I love my shouty boys. But this 45 minutes is a well-oiled machine. Not a second is wasted. Every bit of staging, every bit of music. Perfect. In fact, Siri, play the greatest Doctor Who track ever composed. Mr. Gold, I can't feature more than 20 seconds of your song for copyright reasons. But that's your greatest piece of music ever. And that's a high bar. Somehow, Murray Gold conjuring an orchestra from hell doesn't feel overblown. The script and the visuals match that intensity. The sheer dread anytime they are on screen. Whenever we cut back to them storming to victory, it's nerd porn for my eyes. As they just crash through a wall or murder an entire family, them storming the Valiants is probably my favourite 5 seconds in this entire show. Series 4 is filled with consistently great episodes, but I often forget what an apex achievement this finale was. The Stolen Earth did Infinity War before Infinity War on a smidgen of the budget, but with exactly the same scale of stakes. An achievement? Try a miracle. I don't understand how people can just discuss it like it's a normal Doctor Who episode. The two people who really sell it are Barrowman and Sladen. All throughout, their reactions are heartbreaking. If you didn't buy into the stakes then, you definitely will after seeing Liz Sladen say goodbye to her son. It's an amazing story, only slightly marred by a ever so lackluster part 2, but come on, you couldn't possibly up part 1. There is a better ending in there than Donna Ex Machina, and one day I will find it. But never before has the show soared so high. That cliffhanger was the peak of many a childhood. This is Davis at his most efficient. This is his tightest script. But in terms of my favourite script from the man, well, that's another story. It's Waters of Mars. The bravest and most interesting story of this entire era. It shook my world when I saw it, and it holds a genuine shot at best resolution in this series. Worst case scenario, base under siege that pushes this Doctor over the edge, and his vulnerabilities from 2-3 seasons back front and centre.
It's taken me all these years to realise the laws of time are mine, and they will obey me!
This is a stunning, deranged performance from Tennant, giving 2 career performances back to back. The thing is, Tennant actually playing a cutesy energetic Doctor is him playing against type, and it's this kind of material where he really becomes one of my favourite actors. Period. Scarier than anything the Daleks or the Master can muster, but it's not just the finale. Waters of Mars doesn't need for Time Lord Victoria's freak-out at the end for it to be a great episode. Bowie Base 1 is always convincing, a base under siege on a giant budget. Adelaide Brooke is one of my favourite historical figures in the show. And Davis's mere suggestion that the current kids watching can grow up to become future famous figureheads of history is such a nice note that I'm sad we've never returned to it in a happier story. Notice how Adelaide believes everything the Doctor says, cutting through all the usual cliches. And in that, finally provided this Doctor with a knockback he needed. There's nothing sudden about this. I'd say his entire run was building to it. Although we're fast approaching 2059, I feel like this story will forever be timeless, if only more people spoke about it. Next, Human Nature. One of the best 10 stories has almost no 10 in it. You know what's really interesting about this 2-parter? If you don't like John Smith, if you're not completely invested in the human man that is John Smith, this episode falls flat. If the script or David Tennant in a dual role don't pick up the slack, the episode doesn't work. The audience is just waiting for the Doctor to come back and John Smith to go away, but you don't. The main character, Doctor Who, and you almost don't want him to return. Now that is something. A great case can and has been made that this is the best Doctor Who story ever, of all time. And I'm finding that harder and harder to dispute. There's so many favourites in the Tennant era. Martha earns her stripes. These are my favourite villains from the new series. Like It Goes Daleks, Family of Blood, Slitheen. And there's just so many quiet subtleties to every beautiful scene that aren't usually there in an episode of Doctor Who. In my own comment section, I spoke for days about one tiny scene from this episode. That's how smart this script is. Whatever your interpretation, I'm just glad people are talking about it. Why they've never brought Paul Cornell back again is a mystery to me. Number 4, Prisoner of the Daleks. Now, I've already covered this one in person, albeit with dodgy lighting and an unflattering shirt, but I'll summarise. Let's do this one in bullet points. The best BBC novel, practically across the board. A unique, sadistic portrayal of the Daleks, reminding you they are real tacticians and even one of them can outthink an army. A great throwback to 60s Dalek mania, with all the Dalek hunters and mercenaries that Absalom Dark could ever hope for. It's unique and it's scary, and it's such a different kind of test for late Tennant, one with very little light or winds to be had. The Doctor even grows some suitable stubble for the edgy adventure in hand. Love it. The Daleks have definitely lost something over the years. Personally, I find them pretty fucking lovable, and although episodes like The Stolen Earth and Dalek might make you fear them again, it's stories like this that make you hate them again. They are despicable in this. You learn about a lot of little Dalek details. In 3 words, this is a lesson in cruelty. And last of all, easy, Death and the Queen. Every Big Finish 10 audio is flawless. There's maybe 2 that are like a 7 out of 10. I really recommend them. They'll transport you instantly. Death and the Queen is the funniest episode of Doctor Who ever made. And no, I'm not just being hyperbolic today. I understand this is a show with a history of comedy writers such as Moffat and Douglas Adams, actors like Capaldi and Baker. Tate and Tennant are just flexing all of their comedy muscles, and it's a different kind of Doctor this time. Tennant has had some years away from the role, and he's a lot more wiry here, a bit more twitchy and weaselly. If you don't miss this era already, pop in Death and the Queen. You will be on the brink of tears by the time the end credits play. God bless you, Big Finish, for giving us more of a good thing. And a Martha box set next time, please. With these in the Titan range, I can officially pretend it's 2009 forever. Whatever your opinion on his era, the world misses 10. And for good reason.